And here's the custom enclosure partition from Subthump. I don't think that anyone else makes this except Subthump. Came with this little metal decal. If you get on Amazon, they don't charge extra for Corvette written into the carpet. This is nice to have these. This is a sealed box, and these are, I think, only available in 8-inch because the volume of the box is 0.41 maybe. Looks like it's a good quality product. That's good. Now here's the important test. Will the kicker sub fit in these holes? And it's a perfect match, which is good. If you buy the Scar Audio subs, these dual voice coil, purchase points, mounts, whatever you want to call them, are off to the side quite a bit, and they are not flush with this. So don't buy the Scar Audio. You will have to cut into this wood to make it fit. I got lucky and these fit perfect. Let me show the model number again for these. CWR8. So because these are dual voice coil and they're 2 ohm, I have to wire these a specific way so that it's 2 ohm impedance on my amplifier, which is the minimum amount. So you have to, this is called series. So your ground to your positive on here, on each sub will be identical. And now you have 2 points here. It's going to run back out right here on each side of the box. And those will be put in parallel together. So you're taking 2 ohm subs, making them 4, putting them in parallel outside of the box to get the 2 ohms again that you need to run. And again, that's just my specific amplifier that I have. So you want to do this based on whatever your amplifier is. If your minimum is 4, that would be a different way to do it. Mine just happens to be 2, so that's what I'm going with. So I had to buy these connectors to put on the back, and I bought this kind, the it's 1/4 inch female 12-10 gauge, and it is just a little bit, it was just a little bit too big. The other ones that they have were probably a better fit, but the wire wouldn't go in there. So I had to get these with the little trick that you can do. You can pinch them slightly, and they will fit very snug after that to one side, then the other. If you happen to have pinched it too hard, get a tool like this, press it down in and gap it just a little bit. You want it to fit on there pretty snug, and you want it to have the full contact on the back. So that's what I ended up having to do. When you put these screws back in, just do it hand tight. It's not worth the risk of using a drill and stripping out the wood, because if that gets stripped out, then you're just out of luck. This fits really snug without these screws, but just have to put them in. Okay, I've got the seat out, and it is held in with a 15mm, and you have to use the deep well, at least on the front. The back I did not have to. Held in with these 2 connectors. You'll have to pull these blue pins out of the side of this. It's like a little lock that holds it in. You pull that out, spread them out, and it just falls out. This connection is the same as the door panel. It's got the handle that goes back, and then it just falls out. This panel has these little plastic, well, they're not plastic, they're actually metal. This to kind of clip, but the difficult piece was right here. It's this panel. I'm not sure why it was so difficult to take out. The bottom one was easy, but the top one was a bit harder, and you can see that it connects in here and here. And what we have, a good spot for a ground that's already being used, so we're going to ground into that for the amp. Once you get down here, there's a little, almost like a channel that this fits in really perfectly until you get to this latch. So I took the clothes hanger, ran it through, looped it in, pulled it through, and now it's going to go this way. It should run right through here. Then we'll get to where we need to be. So here we have a nice little chart from Sonic Electronics that shows you which wire gauge size you need based on your total amplifier, not the peak power, but the RMS wattage. So 4 gauge is going to cover you up to 1,000 watts. Most people are not going to be putting out more than that. If you've got something crazy, go ahead and do 2 or 1. And please, please, please buy pure copper. Do not buy copper-coated aluminum. On the Bose amp replacement, since that was a 400 watt device, that's why I only ran that 8 gauge wire. They also have a little chart here that shows the distance from the car battery to the amplifier. Something I realized after I've done this install is my 2005, that C6 is the only year where the battery is still under the hood. If you've got anything after that, then it's a lot easier. The battery is in the trunk on the passenger side in that little box that sits in the hatch. And so that makes things a lot easier. Unfortunately, I had to drill through my firewall, and that felt miserable because it's made of fiberglass, but the installation kit that I got with the wire had a grommet, and I basically picked the drill bit that grommet slid over perfectly and flush, picked that drill bit, drilled through, and then it ended up being the absolute perfect size for the wire to push through. So I got lucky on that end. Also wanted to talk about this again. I covered it in the other video. This post is going to be sufficient for your power supply if you're running with the 2005 model. There's a really large gauge wire from the battery that powers this post. So my setup is exactly like this with my small Rockford amp, and then I just ran off the other way with the Alpine amp. And take the time to zip tie this stuff together, mount it properly. Don't just bolt it in, cram it down in there. These things, these glass fuse cases can be really finicky, and if you feel like you've tightened it down and you just wad it in there, it's going to come undone. So take the time to install that properly. Some people will run things directly off fuses in here, various accessories like aftermarket lights or something. This is for low power draw only coming out of here. I wouldn't trust anything else. The only reason I'm using that post is because I know that large wire is powering it. So everything is now installed except for the seat. That's the only spot where you can see a wire. It's not very easily visible. It just runs along. I pushed it in under here. Came down to here. I know it looks bad that it's just popping out here, but there's no tension. There's no pressure on these wires. This piece of plastic isn't pressing up hard against them. It's just resting there, and I ran those through. It looks really neat to have cut the holes in the carpet, but you're cutting holes in your carpet. Again, emphasis on that ABS plastic. It has to be on the bottom because this amp, gravity's pulling this carpet down, and over time you don't want this to come and start to gap out at the top. So the biggest issue is that the RCA cables I bought were way too long. I'm left with that much, and there's no room up here to put this. There's no room that I can figure out anywhere to put this, so I've not got any options here. I'm just gonna see how it does in the floor. I don't think any weight's going to be pressing on it. And the sliding of the seat back, it should clear over top of that, but then we still have to test that. If it looks like it's good, I can probably just get a piece of tape or a zip tie and hug it over here to the, maybe to the rail. It just depends on what the clearance is when I get this in. Also, this RCA cable has a remote line built into the RCA cable. That's why that's running that way. And that's, at first thought, I'm thinking that's a horrible idea because you're running a power line right next to your sound signal. So I don't know how big of a factor that's going to play in the sound quality. Obviously they made it this way on purpose, so we'll just see how it turns out. Okay, this is when the amp's turned on. You got the blue light. I don't know if it changes a different color for protection mode or not. I chose to mount it with the equalizer on this side so that you can easily access it and adjust it as needed. I actually don't want to turn it up all the way because I did for a second, and it's so loud it's going to disturb the neighbors. Okay, I wanted to add some discussion to the way that I've mounted the amplifier. And you can see here there was a piece of foam that went the whole length of the carpet. And I ended up, first I attempted to just cut out where the screws would go. Ended up having to just take an X-Acto knife, cut along here, peel it all off. There's just a strip of glue that sort of goes up, over, and zigzags back. It wasn't that difficult to get it off. You'll see that these screws are barely poking through, and if it makes you feel better, you can dull them or get a type of grinder and just cut them flush. But when this lays down, the foam actually keeps these screws from touching the metal here. It is not in contact with that. Something else that you have to be careful of is that you put this ABS plastic or wood or whatever you're using further, far enough down so that the amplifier and the weight of it is not constantly tugging on this carpet. So right here, it needs to sit actually on the floor. If you mount it up high and it's not in contact, you will over time get the sag and, I presume, start separation of your carpet piece, because your carpet right here is one solid piece and you'll be pulling it away. And not that this amplifier is that heavy, but it's just that over time, that's something that was concerning to me. Okay, it's all done. At first you can see some wire behind. Put some electric tape on it. It's black, makes it harder to see. So this is how much space you have with this seat all the way back, and you're not touching the amp. Just for reference, the tip of this button comes to about right here. Try to line it up with the edge of the camera. So let that be your reference point. If you need more legroom than this, consider mounting the amp somewhere else. That's as far back as it's going to go and not touch. Really impressed with it. Really love the sound. Well, I can't find a CD to play, and I can't play Spotify and record video at the same time, so I'm not going to be able to give you a sample of the sound quality. There's sort of a funny smell, and I think it's the glue that they used in this box. Looking at it on camera, this box looks like it's a lighter colored gray, but really it's almost a perfect match, probably within 5% variance of color. It just looks different on camera, I guess because of the contrast. I'm just going to let the unboxing video play behind this while I give some final thoughts. There's not a lot of goodies inside of these boxes to make it a very entertaining unboxing video, so I'm just going to scrap that and let it play here. Final thoughts is that I am satisfied with my purchases. I'm still torn between if I want to get a touch screen or not. Just overall in the sound system. It does update the look, but I just don't like the touch screen. The subs that I got, again, if you go with that box, you're limited to the 8-inch sub. And I had read on Crutchfield reviews that some people were saying that for the amount of power they were sending to the subs, it just wasn't enough. And I understand some people want their subs to hit so hard that it makes their nose hair wiggle, or they can feel it thump against their chest. And I don't need that anymore. I had that set up 15, 16, 18 years ago, and I've had my share of that. This setup that I have is just meant to add the full range of sound so that you get the bass notes. If you really want it to thump and annoy your neighbors, you do have the option to turn this Alpine amp up, and it will do that. If you'd watched the other videos, you know that I don't have the rear speakers in the rear panels. Those are just completely gone. It's just the subs that are in the back for the rear stage, and I think that that's all you need. In my opinion, it sounds fine to me, and that's coming from someone who's really particular and picky about the way the car audio sounds. Overall, how hard this was to do, I think the hardest thing was getting the ABS plastic to be the base for the Alpine amp. I think that was probably the hardest, just because it was time consuming, and that was a learning process. And you'll have your own learning process as you go. Um, you'll have an idea of how you want something mounted a certain way, and it doesn't work out, so you pick another spot, and that's fine. Unless you do this for a living, you're not going to get it knocked out in 45 minutes. I don't know exactly how long this took me to do. I just poked around at it yesterday and today, and over 2 days we got the sub part done. I think for the price that I paid, some people would say it's not worth it. That they would have just added the subs and not replaced the door speakers and all that like I did. But to me, it was worth it. I am one of those picky people with sound. If you have any questions at all about this install, leave your question in the comments section. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know these aren't produced on a Hollywood budget or anything, and it's made with free video editing software. I hope you enjoyed the information, that you can learn something from this. There's just not a ton of stuff out there of people doing installs on Corvettes. Be sure that you like, subscribe, and I appreciate you for watching this. Give it a thumbs up. Thanks.